You're listening to the Love Unplugged podcast, episode 129. Starting a business can be overwhelming. There's so much to learn, and sometimes you don't even know what you don't know. So what can you do to make the process smoother and less frustrating? Today, my guest shares her best advice for someone starting out. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Hey there, I'm your host, Jessica Fergon, and I am passionate about doing the inner work needed to reach your goals. Let me be your guide as we navigate all the fears and insecurities that surface when it's time to step outside of your comfort zone. Along with my knowledgeable guests and industry experts, I'm here to teach you how to reawaken your life purpose and passion and create the steps to turn your intentions into action. Ultimately, my goal is to empower you to rise above those blocks holding you back and start living a life that you are worthy and deserving of. So come on, it's time to slow down, find a comfy spot with your favorite organic tea, and get inspired. Thank you for tuning in to the Love Unplugged podcast. Hello, loves. Today I am joined by the lovely Shea, a holistic health practitioner based in Atlanta, Georgia. She is an energy healer, podcaster, Atlanta local, period expert, sexual health educator, and so much more. She teaches women all across the globe how to regulate their periods, balance hormones, and heal the gut. So you're basically like the one-stop shop for us women, which I love.
That was my goal, right? Like I just wanted to fill the gaps for all the places that I felt like I never had any resources. And so that was my goal, to be the one-stop shop.
I love that. So welcome, Calee. I am just so honored to have you as my guest, and I'm so excited to learn all about your own personal story and journey, but also the advice that you're about to share with us. So before we start, for those that don't know you yet, I would love for you to share a little bit more about you personally.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm Calee Shea. That's kind of the rundown of my work and my business. I started this because when I went on hormonal birth control my senior year of high school, I came off of it very shortly after because I really struggled with being on it. I had a lot of brain fog, a lot of confusion, things like that. I came off of it and really was sent into like a tailspin of health issues. Which I now know were very much related to like issues I had prior to HBC that HBC just sort of brought to the surface, as well as what hormonal birth control can do. So combination of things. And, I had acne, I had hair loss, I had mood swings all over the place, crazy periods. And so that is how I ended up doing what I do. And so now I work with menstruators who want to tap into their body, feel more connected to themselves, and really just work on that side that really is very underserved in a lot of ways. And like you said, I live in Atlanta. We have a little small farm with chickens and ducks, and lots of way too many dogs and cats. So yeah, that's kind of like the general overview of why I do what I do and little personal tidbit about who I am.
I love that. So let's dive into this personal health journey. So you had some underlying issues. You started taking the hormonal birth control.
It's a tongue twister.
Yes, HBC. Let's just go with that. I like that term. And that's when things kind of started coming to the surface. So what exactly was the underlying issues that came up? How does a birth control trigger those things? And like, what was your own experience, figuring out exactly what was wrong? Like, what was that whole health journey like?
Yeah. So prior to HBC, I had a pretty sensitive system, growing up and that sort of thing. I always struggled with like chemicals and things like that. So now what I know really is that my gut was struggling prior to going on hormonal birth control. I had pretty rough periods before I went on, but that was normal, right? Like everyone had cramps. That's fine. And so when I got on hormonal birth control, the way that HPC works in the system is, right, it shuts off like a natural flow of what's happening. That's kind of like in a nutshell. And so when I got on it and then came off of it, it really just exacerbated some of the issues that I was already dealing with my gut and sensitivities and things like that. And then it added, more toxin load to the system. And so I think a lot of it, like I said, was issues that I'd had prior that it just brought to the surface. But I also had a really negative reaction to HBC itself, which a lot of people do. Um, Obviously, like that's what I do, and I talk to people all day long who went on hormonal birth control wanting it as maybe a solution to a period problem or just control over their fertility, whatever that reason is, and they also had really terrible experiences on it. So long-winded answer to your question, but yeah, that was sort of my journey with it.
So what were your steps in, resolving the issues that you were experiencing?
Yeah, so many years. It doesn't take everyone that long, but I really was starting from ground zero. I This was in 2016 when I was really starting to get into like health stuff and understanding what was happening in my body. Like I said, my hair was falling out. I was covered in acne. My moods were all over the place. My periods were terrible. It was a combination of stuff. Digestion was all over the place. And so I really went through, there wasn't a ton of information on hormonal birth control at the time. Luckily, now we have a lot of resources between, books and Instagram and things like that. At the time, it was lots of diets. That was really popular. Lots of like, you know, 90-day restriction healing protocols and things like that. And they were very intense. So I did a
Mm-hmm.
lot of those thinking like that was the solution. Um, Lots of like paleo, and I tried keto. Like I did everything that I thought might be the solution. Lots of supplements. I spent so much money on worthless supplements, like an acne supplement or
Oh
whatever,
God,
thinking
yeah.
like that's the thing. You know what? This one pill will fix it.
Exactly.
So I did a lot of that before I really understood how to work on my body and work with my body. So I, spent so much time trying all these really, I would say like crash diets and, quick fixes. And I wasn't taking the time to understand like what was happening, why it was happening, and how to address it. So that really didn't start until I started looking more into like holistic health, because I was, like I said, I was doing crash diets and supplements. I wasn't looking at like my stress and my sleep and how to actually fuel my body rather than to restrict it from things. And I wasn't figuring out like what key supplements I actually needed. So it took me a long time to figure out that it is not, the crash diets aren't the solution. There's not a quick fix. And I really just had to learn to work with my system and go through that step-by-step process and give myself the time and space to heal as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I find it so funny that we always turn to like a quick fix, like
Mm-hmm.
either take more supplements,
Mm-hmm.
basically meal sized supplements, and it's going to fix everything, or like try this crash diet that's like the fad right now, but really like
Mm-hmm.
you need to get to the root of the issue.
Yeah, my body was like, please just give us like actual like real food, like complete meals maybe.
Hmm.
I don't know, crazy concept.
Like, give me some nutrients, give me some whole
Yes.
foods, give me some like real
And I was
food.
like, how about this restriction diet?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so then at what point were you like in this whole knowledge journey, and then you're realizing like, I'm actually really interested in this. I could turn this into a business.
Yeah, so I didn't intend for this to be my job. I started pursuing my education in holistic health. Really for me. Like that was because I felt like I needed the help, right? Like I couldn't, my doctors told me I was normal, like everything was fine. So like I said, I was doing every diet, every supplement or whatever. I started looking into like holistic health and taking, any book, any lecture, literally anything I can get my hands on, as well as pursuing my education in holistic nutrition and holistic health. And so throughout this journey, I had been documenting my, just like my story about this on Instagram and through my blog. So I was writing the occasional posts of like, what was working, what wasn't working, and things like that. And I really quickly realized that I was not the only person who had had this experience and that I was not alone in this. And as I was, seeing results, I had people reach out to me like, well, how did you do this? How did you accomplish this? What happened here? And I already had the education and the qualifications to be a coach. That was just never my intention. And so it sort of just fell into my lap. And I was like, wow, I can help other people who have been through this same thing, maybe not have to spend as long as I did on it, right? Like maybe they can get there a lot quicker and not have to go through all of the turmoil that I did. So that is how it sort of happened. It kind of just unfolded really organically.
Gotcha. Okay. So then what was your process in actually like going through the business creation steps, like figuring out your business name, like the
Hmm.
branding, the positioning, the courses, like all that type of stuff? What was your process like in defining what that was going to look like?
Okay, so I got, you know how Facebook shows you like those memories,
Yes.
for however many years ago. Well, I got one the other day and I was selling, it was many years ago. I was selling like nutrition consults for like $27.
Oh my
And I was
God.
like, oh my God, girl. Um, so it really started with me having no idea what this would look like online. And just like, I felt like I didn't know how to position myself. I didn't know how to market myself. And I didn't really have any understanding of like who my ideal client actually was, right? Like I can go through the list and say like, this is her age and this is, what keeps her up at night. But I couldn't pinpoint who she was and what her experiences were.
Hmm.
And so it took I invested in a business coach. I would say a few months into just like kind of playing around with the idea of coaching. I really didn't go into it like hardcore full time until beginning of 2020. 2019, I was dabbling, right?
Hmm.
Like I was kind of halfway there, halfway out. And then 2020, I really went into it full swing. And I think that process was really just me figuring out, there's a lot of me figuring out like my worth and also what I could provide for people. And I really love to teach and to educate. So I wanted a way to bring that into like, how can I empower people through education? Because I think that's where a lot of confusion around these topics and shame comes from. So really for me, it was just figuring out like how all of that blended together into my business. And I think that, having business coaches was so essential to that journey because I don't think that I really knew what it was like to structure and build an online business and to launch courses and things like that. I had the education in health and nutrition and all that, but I didn't know how to apply that to providing it for someone as a service.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. Like having a coach makes all the difference. It really helps you figure all that stuff out because it's like a brand new world, right? That you're stepping
Yeah.
into when you're starting an online business like that. It's
Mhm.
insane the stuff that we just don't know.
Oh yeah, I had no clue what I didn't even know at the time.
Hmm.
Like I said, I didn't know how to like really even structure a program or anything like that. It was just, like let's just go for it. And over time, obviously that's developed and changed and flowed. But yeah, it started with like little $27 consults.
Amazing. So over the last, I think, few years now, I can't even remember
Mhm.
what year we're in anymore. COVID has changed everything.
Time
Time
does
has
not
stopped.
matter.
Yeah. All right. So what have been your biggest lessons and your biggest wins?
So I think my biggest win off the top of my head is that 2020 was a six-figure year, which was a big deal because that was really, like I said, the first year that I like jumped into it full swing and like really put all my eggs in that basket. Um, and so that felt really good. It was nice to like see that, you know, pan out. Um, but I also think, outside of like, yeah, it's great to like have that like monetary goal that you've hit. I think outside of that, it's like seeing all of these clients that I've worked with over the past few years, reaching out months or even a year or two later and being like, oh my God, I still feel amazing. Like everything. And I know that, when you show up to this work and you consistently stick with it, it pays off and it's not difficult. But,
Mhm.
we've all done that where we like made a lifestyle change and then reverted back or that sort of thing. And it's nice to like talk to them all and hear that it sticks and that it works for them long term, and I love knowing that. So I think those are honestly like my biggest wins, and like those are the ones that I literally just like cry every time I get that message. My fiance always laughs because if I'm like looking at my phone crying, he's like, who had a good day, like who did well, like because like I just get so excited for them that they get that progress and they get to see it. So to me that really is like, it's not my win, but it's a win that I get to share with them, and I feel very excited about that. Um, yeah, I would say that's probably at the top of my list, like just seeing their growth and like seeing them being able to sustain it.
Gotcha. I love that. It's always about the clients, right? Like helping. That's
Mhm.
the purpose. We're here to serve, right? That's why we've
Yeah.
created a business.
And I think if you forget that like that's the priority, that at the end of the day, like I'm here to serve and to like show up and to help people solve problems that I personally did not have solutions to for a very long time.
Mhm.
I think if you forget that, like, what's the point?
Exactly. Now, what would you have as advice for someone who is about to start their own coaching business?
Have hire help, like get help. I I don't think I even knew much about the coaching space prior to prior to really being in it. Like I didn't know that people were business coaches or whatever. And so I give myself a little grace there, but I think that that is so crucial just to have someone who like knows what they're doing and has helped others do the same thing, build a successful online business. And that was really like one of the best things I ever did for myself was invest in that, no matter how scary it was, but it was so worth it.
How did you get over the fear? Because a lot of people struggle with that investment, right? Like either, they're probably maybe not making as much as they should be in their business or feel
Hmm.
like they should be. And, forking out that kind of money, it's scary at first because you don't know if you're going to make it back. You don't know if you're making the
Yeah.
right decision. So how did you kind of overcome that fear or push through it?
Yeah. So I think for me, it's really like I have this sometimes naive but very like overconfident belief that like it will work out. Like
Mm-hmm.
I will be successful at this. And like I don't know why that has stuck with me for so many years in this business is that I just even like when there's challenges or whatever, I have this like unwavering belief that like it will all work out. And so I think that I've really gone into it with that. But also just thinking in the back of my mind, like, okay, if I invest, for example, $2,000 into this coach, do I believe that I personally can make $2,000? Heck yes, I do. Like, absolutely, I know I can make that back. And so I think that is how I justify it and how I feel comfortable with it. And also knowing that, like, do I believe that they're going to teach me something that will at least make me my investment back? And if I don't believe that, then why am I investing in them?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that both of those questions are important. Like, do I believe I'm capable of that? And do I also believe that they're going to add that much value?
Yeah, I love that. Now let's talk about periods, hormones, gut health, all that good stuff.
Hmm.
So, right off the bat, what does a healthy period look and feel like? Like, you know how you started with your journey, like I didn't know any different, right? Like
Hmm.
even myself, like I don't know if like should I be having this many cramps? Should my periods be this heavy? Like what is the norm?
Yeah. So, I mean, the way I describe in a nutshell, like an elevator pitch for a healthy period, is that it shouldn't impact your day to day. Like, and I think that's really what it comes down to is like, if this is impacting your life, that is a red flag to me. It's normal for us to feel a little bit tired or it's we may feel a little run down, like we are essentially performing internal surgery on ourselves, like that's happening.
Yes.
And so it's okay to be like tired. You don't expect to go get like open heart surgery and then, not that I'm equating open heart surgery to a period, but you know what I mean.
Mhm.
We don't expect to do that and then like go on a run the same day. Like that's not, we don't anticipate that. So I think that it's changing your expectations a little bit for what your body should be doing during that time. Like we should be resting, we should be recovering. But it also shouldn't make me have to call into work sick. Or, be in so much pain that I can't like do anything else. And so a healthy period really looks painless, it doesn't impact your day to day, and it comes regularly and doesn't leave you guessing. I often equate it to like a house guest. We want her to come for the weekend. She doesn't make too much of a mess. She's a little bit in our way because, right, we have someone in our house, but then she leaves when she's supposed to, and then everything's fine. And I want you to think of your period the same way.
Hmm. I like that analogy. Okay, so then second question is I guess this is kind of related to hormones, but why do we get so freaking grumpy before? Like it's funny because that's like my announcement that it's on its way. It's coming in a day or two. I get like this one day where if you like look at me the wrong way, you better watch out.
Yes, so common. And there's a couple different reasons why this can happen, but really, I chalk it up to the fact that like our hormones are fluctuating.
Mhm.
And so, right before our period, essentially like our hormones are coming to a peak and they are building up, building up, building up, and then they sort of drop off. And when that happens, we get almost what I would say is like, it's not a crash, but like equivalent to like a crash almost in what we are experiencing. And that's what triggers our period. But sometimes that can just really impact us as those hormones start to go down. We were almost on this like high of like estrogen and progesterone, like it's all in the system, it's pumping, and all of a sudden it's tanking. Which it has to do, that's natural and normal, but we can feel that if the fluctuations are too extreme, if we've got a lot of stress on the system, and we just don't handle that fluctuation as well. So, oftentimes my goal is to make sure that you're supporting the body in every way possible so that those fluctuations don't feel so extreme and intense. So like I said, that looks at like stress management, and oftentimes that can be attributed to nutrient deficiencies. So things like magnesium, zinc, vitamin D, I like to look at those and see if those are in range. That can make it harder to cope with those changes. Making sure that like we're eating and sleeping, which it all sounds like basics, but it is so underrated sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's totally true. How does magnesium, so I've heard this often that you should be taking magnesium, but how does that help like
Yeah.
periods?
So magnesium has like this wonderful role in the body. It's like one of my top supplements that I suggest most people look into. I don't like to say like everyone should take it because obviously like I can't tell everyone, what they should or shouldn't take and like what
Mm-hmm.
their health status is. But it is something that's like worth looking into. We're pretty like as a society pretty considered pretty low in magnesium, and the reason for that is because we live in a pretty high stress state. So magnesium is, I picture it like your body stores it in a bucket, right? And anytime we get like a stressor or anything like that, magnesium gets dumped into the system. It helps calm things down, regulates. And so your body doesn't know the difference between you getting cut off in traffic or running for your life from a tiger, right? We're still in that mindset of like we may as well be cavemen from that standpoint. And so we don't store we don't store enough to cope with the high stress life that we live now. And so it is something that really, as long as we're like replenishing that frequently and absorbing that, it relaxes your system. It helps to manage like stress and anxiety. And so when we are going through any of those fluctuations, a lot of that really is just like your body needing to cope with it. And so we just have to give ourselves the proper tools to do so.
Okay, that makes sense. So as we get older, can our periods change? So I'm 37. I've definitely noticed a little bit of a difference in my period. Like it seems to be like full on 7 days now for some reason. Is that normal?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think through your life in general, your health status is going to change, right? Different things are going to fluctuate. Different things are going to change, and so I talk to my clients about this a lot. But like your health, your life is going to change based on seasons, age, stress, where you're at in your life, where you live in the world. Like all of those things can cause fluctuations. And so while there is like a normal for your body, right? It's not abnormal for the way that your body kind of expresses itself, I would say, to shift a little bit. So, some people like their hair changes like halfway through their life. You've heard the stories of people being like, I never had, curly hair and now I do. And, it's not abnormal for the way that your body expresses itself to shift. The only time that I really when I worry about that, it's when we are in pain and discomfort, things like that. Those shifts could be abnormal. It could be sign of a health issue. But if we're shifting from, I used to have 5-day periods, now I have 7-day periods, but they're still not painful. I don't notice any any PMS symptoms, whatever that is. As long as we can rule out that it wasn't like the cause wasn't a health issue, it's not, to me, that's not abnormal.
So is there any way to like naturally reduce the length of your period? Like I find 7 days, like that's just enough.
Yeah.
It's too long. So is there any way to do that in a natural way without taking some kind of a medication or doing something stupid?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a great question. So, anywhere from like 2 to 3 to 7 days is considered in the normal range. So, while it can be annoying, it's not necessarily outside of what's a normal healthy range. The biggest things I would look at that maybe, especially since this isn't like a normal for you, like you said, I would look at just like where your stress levels are at, because that's such a huge one. As well as long as you're like supporting your gut and doing those things, it will settle into like what your body sees as like the normal healthy range for you.
Okay. Okay. What are your thoughts on birth control? So I know that you've had issues with HBC before.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to know kind of more about what you think about that. And, specifically when it comes to like when you are starting to date or you're married and you're having intercourse and whatnot, you do want to be pregnant or you do want to be protected because maybe you're just not ready to get pregnant right away. And maybe condoms are just not the choice that you want. Who knows, right? But how can we like take care of that without having issues with hormonal birth controls?
Yeah. So I've said this a lot that I am not an HPC hater. I'm not anti birth control. I'm just pro education.
Hmm.
I think that could be shifting. I think I'm getting into the territory where I just am anti-hormonal birth control. I think we're getting there. Because for a long time, like I said, I'm not like anti it. I obviously will always respect anyone's decision to be on that, and I will absolutely like fight for someone's right to be on it. Doesn't mean I have to love it. And my issue with it is I feel like there's not a lot of education around it. There's also not a lot of consent towards what it does to the body and how it impacts us. I don't know that any of us really get that education when we go into like the OBGYN and they go through like, here's how it impacts your mental health and here's what has been proven to do to the gut and here's what nutrients it, makes it difficult to absorb. Like I didn't get any of that.
Mm.
And I don't think, most menstruators I talked to also didn't get that. And so I think that that is my biggest frustration with it is that a lot of us go on it without really understanding or knowing what it does and why. And and so personally, I prefer, you know, a natural birth control route. And that's what I do, that's what I practice, it's what I teach. And I get a lot of kickback for it sometimes because it's not the norm. But I teach something called the fertility awareness method, specifically the symptothermal method. And it has a lower typical failure rate than the pill. And it has a 99.4% rate of success, which that is up there with like most forms of hormonal birth control. It's just not normal. So people are like, oh, that's such a, you're playing with fire there. Well, not really. I mean, it's been proven by multiple studies and it's gone, really gone through like intense look into how the practice actually works. And it's been shown to be comparable to most forms of hormonal birth control. So that's my preference. Personally, that's what I would love to see more menstruators empowered with at least the decision, to choose between one or the other. And obviously, like I said, for them to have anyone to have more information and more education around hormonal birth control. So at least we can make like that conscious decision, to choose to deal with that and to go on that and understanding what the potential consequences are and understanding how to support our bodies if we do choose to go on it. And so yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it.
What is this natural one that you're talking about? Like, what is that all about?
Yeah, so it's called the fertility awareness method. There's different versions of fertility awareness methods, and if you Google it, you're going to get a terrible rate of success because basically, according to like Planned Parenthood and resources like that, they group in every natural method under that name, which isn't really accurate. So if you're gonna look into it, I suggest looking into like the different methods. Like I said, I teach the symptothermal method. There's the Creighton model, the Billings method. There's different versions of it, and those are gonna have their own individual rates for success. So, like I said, symptothermal method is what I teach and what I use, and it's based on your body's biological signs. So, your body has to go through a few different fluctuations and changes that can be registered through like your cervical fluid production, or commonly known as like discharge, and not quite the same thing, but that's usually what we equate it to. And your basal body temperature, meaning your resting temperature. So, you between those two things, you can literally detect when you are going to be fertile. You can confirm that ovulation has occurred and that you're out of your fertile window because we would only get pregnant during that fertile window. So if we know when that's coming up and when that has passed, we're basically in the clear.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. It's
Huh.
pretty amazing.
That's so interesting. I'm gonna have to look into that more.
Mhm. I love it because it is, like I said, it's a natural birth control method. But it's also a great method for conception too. All of my clients who are trying to conceive use this and they all love it because we know like when it's coming up, when's the best time to try. For using something like an app, like the Clue app, for example, and Clue has updated since in the past few months to say that like they can't accurately predict ovulation. But they have about a 23% success rate of like actually confirming when ovulation is. So, we all have those apps. It's like, oh, you're going to be fertile this week, or, you're going to start your period this week. I often say like your iPhone doesn't know what your ovaries are doing. And so that is not like my favorite way to do it. And a lot of people, when they're trying to get pregnant, will use like, oh, my phone says now. But you could be missing that window by multiple days. And it could be seem like you can't get pregnant when actually you're not trying on the right days.
Oh, that's so interesting. Okay.
Mhm.
That makes sense. What about, so hormones? So that's another component.
Mhm.
What is normal, and when should you be aware that there might be something like an imbalance somewhere?
Yeah. So, comes back to like I said, like a normal healthy period should not be impacting our day to day. So if you find like you're calling in sick to work, you're in pain, going to the hospital because like your pain is normal or your pain is so intense, those are all abnormal symptoms. But even coming down to like acne and digestive issues, those are all red flags. I want to remind people that like your body wants to heal, it wants to be healthy, it wants to feel good. And so anytime like those things are out of alignment when we're not feeling good, it's worth looking into. And that can often, sometimes like that can often be dismissed. And I encourage people to advocate for themselves because when something's off in your body. And, it just takes a little bit of digging sometimes to figure out what that is.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, how is your gut health connected to your period? Like they
So,
seem like completely two separate things, but
right.
how?
So your gut really is like the root of most things and how your body functions. And so our gut's how we absorb things. It's how we, obviously break down and process foods. It includes organs that detox properly. So if those things aren't happening, it can really cause a lot of negative impact on our hormones. So a lot of my work, it comes across as hormone work, but what we're really doing is looking at your gut and making sure that like you're taking care of your gut and that it is healthy and stable. Because when we have a healthy, happy gut, it's going to make our hormones balanced and everything's going to work out with that. Hormone imbalances are not the root cause. They are a symptom of something else that's going on in the body. So whether that's we're not detoxing properly, or we are having food sensitivities, or there's a combination of things of why that's happening that goes so much deeper than just like, oh, estrogen's out of balance, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That makes sense. Now I kind of want to talk about what it's like working with you. So what types of programs or courses and whatnot do you have available? And then what does that experience look like for someone who is struggling and is looking to get help, but they're kind of wary about what they're going to get out of it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think working with a health coach is very different than working with like a business coach or like a spiritual coach or something like that, because there is a lot of education involved, in my opinion. When it's done well, I feel like you have to know why you're doing what you're doing. And so a lot of my work is very education heavy. I think that's where a lot of confusion and shame comes from, is like not really knowing what we're doing. And that's why we do like fad diets and stuff. Like, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm just going to hope it, gets me the results I want. And so a lot of my work is very focused on like giving you a nice foundation for why you're doing this. And my focus is on habit building and shifting our lifestyles. And because it's not like, okay, I'm going to do a 30-day gut healing protocol and then go back to the way I was living before and be fine, right? We can't just like put a Band-Aid over it and it's better. So we have to change what's happening that's caused our gut to be compromised, or whatever the source is, and move forward in a way that is supportive to the way that our body functions. So I work through mostly courses. So I have, like a nutrition course and a course for period health and things like that. I also do a lot of like live master classes, like group classes. I love doing those and just teaching live. And really through that, like I said, I want you to walk away with education and knowing why you're doing what you're doing, and then knowing exactly like what habits will help you get there and how to build them properly. Because I think we've all like looked up protocols and ways to do it, and you get like a list of 20 things, like make sure you're doing all of these things and that's how you'll get better. And I think that that is so overwhelming. So I usually like to focus on like 2, maybe 3 things max at a time. With clients, like, okay, we're going to work on these 3 things. And then once those feel solid, we're going to add in 1 or 2, and then like you'll be done. So like I said, my goal is like education and not to be overwhelming at all, because I think that your health does not have to be difficult. It is oftentimes like our resistance to it or our lack of understanding of why it's happening. That, we resist those changes or working on our lifestyle or our health. And I don't think it has to be difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what are the courses that you have available?
Yeah.
And then any other offerings that you have as well to help your clients and support them with whatever they need?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. So I have a couple different things. I've got a birth control masterclass. It's $27, and it's just a 3-day or 3 video series that was done over 3 days of how hormonal birth control works in the body, how it impacts our systems, things like that. I've got a course called Breaking Up with HBC that is the step-by-step process for how to come off of hormonal birth control and hopefully like avoid those symptoms of post-birth control, like what I dealt with, the hair loss and all that. And then I've got a nutrition course called Hormone Happy Eats, and it is focused all on just making sure that we are eating in a way that is supportive to our hormone health. It's not a diet. It is more understanding like what your body needs and why. And then I've got a class on the fertility awareness method, teaching people how to start practicing that and using that as a method of birth control or as a method of to get pregnant. And then I've got my signature group program, Period Boot Camp, and we actually just relaunched it this week. And we did it more in like a DIY version, and I'm really excited about that. So that is basically head to toe everything to sort of like rehab your period and make it like the dreamy period that you want, rather than all the PMS and the cramps and those sorts of things.
So it's really a one-stop shop again for everything that you need. I love that.
Exactly.
All right. So if anybody wants to learn more about you, where do you hang out the most? What is your website URL? What social media platforms are you on?
Yeah. So Instagram is where I hang out the most. It's at Calee Shea. And then my website is caleeshea.com. I have my podcast called Get Clitorate. The Instagram for that is at Get Clitorate, and it's like clit or it. That's how it is. And so then we have that, and also TikTok. Been hanging out there lately. Did not know how I would feel about that, if I would enjoy that, but we are there, and it's smooth sailing so far.
Okay, let's talk about this podcast here. Clitorate. What is this about?
Yeah. So it actually name came to me in a dream. So funny. I woke up and I was like, that's the name of the podcast. And I was in the middle of like a rebrand. And I was like, okay, I'm going to add a podcast to it. It's going to have a sister brand. Like I just had all these ideas about it. And so Get Clitorate was born. And really it's just about, getting the education and understanding of what it is to be in your body and how it works. And we, talk about everything from like sex and sexual health to hormones to I had a guest come on and talk about like astrology in relation to sex and relationships, really just anything that falls under that category of getting to know your system and how you work and the way you feel and think and those sorts of things.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much, Calee, for joining me today and for sharing your story and experience, but also for giving us such great insights so that we can better understand our periods, our hormones, how gut health is all related. I know so many are going to benefit from this.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I'm Jessica, and thanks for tuning in today to Love Unplugged, the podcast. If there are any questions or topics you'd love answered on the show, head on over to www.projectloveco.com and share your request with me. If you haven't yet, go to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast and share it with a loved one. Your feedback means the world to me, and the community we've created is what fuels our discussions here. After all, this is all for you. Join me next time for another unplugged conversation.